Welcome, my friend. Seven Gray here. Thank you for joining me for this episode today. This is part 6 of a series of videos that I'm doing on passive income for nomads. And today's episode, I want to talk specifically about types of properties that you can buy. In the last episode, I talked about where to buy properties, how to find the city, the ideal city to do that. So I'll link that above where you can go back and check that out. And in this episode, I'm going to be talking about different kinds of properties you can buy for rental income, for passive income, which is what I have. So a lot of the previous episodes talked about different kinds of income, and for the upcoming episodes, the next, 5 or 6 videos that I do in this series will all be about rental income for passive income, particularly great for nomads. So anyway, let's get into it. I myself chose to go with single-family houses, and the ideal there is to try to get a 3-bedroom house, preferably with 2 baths. So I have 3 rental properties. I have one that's a 3-2, that's the real estate terminology. It means 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. And then I have a 3-1, 3-bedroom with 1 bath. Not ideal, but it was a great deal, and so I bought it. And then I have a small house that has 2 bedrooms and 1 bath, which we call a 2-1. My houses that I purchased are what's called block on slab. It means that the walls are made out of cinder block all the way around versus going with something like brick or going with wood framing or stucco or something else like that. So my properties are in Florida. Block on slab is very popular down there, particularly from the 1940s through 1960s. All of my properties fall into those years, and so block on slab is what I have. It's particularly great for rental properties because you have cinder block walls, which are a lot harder to damage, more robust in tropical storms, hurricanes, those kinds of things. And then you have a foundation that is just a solid slab of concrete. So this is much more robust on the floor as well. You don't have wood floor joists and all of those things to worry about. The only thing you really got to look for and make sure there is no sinkholes or ground settling and cracks in your slabs. So before you purchase it, you'll probably want to check that out. So that's the choice I went with, and now I'm going to go through and talk about some of the different kinds of options that you can go with for passive income for rental properties. So the cheapest way to get in, if you don't have very much money, you're just starting out, is you can almost buy a mobile home with a credit card or borrowing from friends. You can find these for $5,000, $6,000, $8,000 for a mobile home, and you can buy that and then turn around and rent it out for $500, $600, $700, something like that. So the question is, why do people choose to go with, say, a block on slab single family house versus a mobile home? Mobile homes are not nearly as durable as a block on slab house. So if you're talking about having a rental property for 20 or 30 or 40 years, probably a mobile home's not going to stand up for that amount of time, particularly if you're in Florida where there's a lot of tropical storms. Of course, there are exceptions if you maintain it and you have a tenant or a owner that lives in one who is taking care of the property. The downside is the type of tenant that you attract. And that's really the determining factor, is each type of property attracts a certain type of tenant in a certain category of lifestyle and income. For instance, if you purchase what we call a McMansion, it's a very large, say 6,000 or 8,000 or 10,000 square foot home for $1 million, and maybe it rents for $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 a month. Your return on your investment is not going to be nearly as high for the money that you're putting in, but the quality of tenant that you get that rents that from you probably is going to take care of the property. They're going to drive nice cars. They're going to have caretakers, groundkeepers, maids, and keep it clean and probably do very little damage to the property. So that's on one end. You have a lower return on investment, but you have a tenant who is maybe more attentive to taking care of the property. At the opposite end of the spectrum, say with the mobile home that I mentioned earlier, the house itself, the structure, the mobile home is not very durable. So it's easy to damage because you have very, very thin wood walls and the floors are not very strong. And so it's very, very easy to have a high amount of damage in a short period of time. And the tenants that you attract when you're trying to rent something out in $500 or $600 range in a, say, mobile home park, the people that are attracted to that may not be, and again, I'm stereotyping in here because, in real estate, you've got to be realistic for the type of tenants that you attract. You may be attracting tenants that are not as attentive. If you can do a really great job with screening, or these are personal friends, then of course those would be ideal, and that situation would be great. But by and large, if you're having complete strangers as tenants, you're at higher risk with a property like a mobile home, at least in my opinion and from the research that I've done. So the next step up from that is what we call a duplex, which is a single structure, and that can be a block on slab, or it could be wood frame, or any number of types of construction, but it has a wall going right down the middle, and you have two families or two tenants, one on one side with their own front door and another on the other side with their own front door, and they have each their own parking space or carport or a garage or whatever they may have. So that gives you two rental properties in one structure. So these you can usually buy at a better deal than a single family house, and sometimes it makes sense because you can do maintenance to one item that may service both sides of your property. The downside is that much like mobile homes or apartment complexes, the tenants that you attract may or may not be as attentive to caring for the property because of the lower rent rate that you'll be charging in a structure like that versus, say, a 3-bedroom house in a single family home. So moving up from that, you have a quadplex, which is very much the same thing. It's 4 units in a single structure, like a miniature apartment complex. And then you have apartment complexes, which may require a lot more capital to get into and would be better structures than, say, mobile homes. But your turnover rate may be higher and the damage to the structures would be higher, and you would have to have a larger staff to maintain the property. So those are some of the options there. Then you move into single family homes, which I think are the ideal compromise on income return on investment versus the risk for the tenants that are put in there. And if you're careful with your screening, I think if you get into a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home, that typically attracts a small family. So a family with, say, 2 children or something like that that can't quite qualify or afford a mortgage, but they're responsible because they're trying to tend and take care of children. And children, again, can also be one of those things that possibly can damage a property or not. Again, screening your tenants is a paramount important thing to do in this process. So anyway, single family houses are probably ideal. I tend to look for foreclosed properties that a husband and wife would take a pass on because they need too much work. So I'm willing to take in a handyman and repair, say, damages to drywall or cracked flooring or something that might not be ideal. So all of my 3 properties I purchased had damage to them and required anywhere from $8,000 to $12,000 a piece to repair, renovate, and get them up to speed. They all required new roofs, they all required AC units, and I put in tile floors in all of those. So that's where most of those costs were. And then some nice paint to get them looking good, operational, functional, and nice properties, and you should be good to go. So that pretty much is the gamut, all the way from mobile homes on one end and McMansions on the other, and somewhere in the middle you get your 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, or 4-bedroom houses. And if you can pick up one of those in a foreclosed property, that may give you your ideal return for your investment. And different areas of the country, different cities are going to rent those for far different rates. For instance, Washington, D.C., New York City, or San Francisco, those rates may be very, very high, thousands of dollars, versus going to Mississippi or Wyoming. That same square footage, that same house may rent for a fraction of the cost. So doing research and figuring out where you can get the best return on your investment is your ideal thing. You can see the previous episode, I'll link above, to try to determine where that is. But I would encourage you to look outside of your current city you're living in and look for the place that gives you your best return on your investment, and perhaps a place that is accessible for you as a nomad to be able to go there if need be, to look at your properties, to work on them or inspect them or deal with troubles. So that's about all I have for this episode. Please write your comments or questions below, and I'll try to address all of those in future episodes where I'll go into more details about how I manage my properties. I'm now doing self-management and talking about management companies, pros and cons of each of those given my own personal experience. That's all I have for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. Savor the moment, and I'll see you in a future video.